Hello everyone, welcome to another video from Fantasy Football Scout. This video is part of our UEFA Fantasy Football coverage. Make sure you get your team sorted, locked in, join all the mini leagues that you need to do because the deadline is fast approaching. As well as partnering with UEFA, Fantasy Scout have also partnered with Just Eat. So we're going to be working together to provide you with tips and strategies, lock your team in, get your food ordered, all of that good stuff. Just so you know, there's some hashtags on the right of your screen. So what Just Eat are doing is they're looking for crazy calls, crazy fantasy calls that come off. So if you captain Alioski and he scores a goal, screenshot your team, add those hashtags, and at the end of each match week, teams will be picked out and you will get Just Eat vouchers if you have made a crazy call and you're one of the lucky ones to be picked out. Also, there will be a mini league coming, a Fantasy Scout in partnership with Just Eat mini league. And if you join that, the top scorers each week and the overall winner will get prizes and rewards from Just Eat as well. Lovely. Anyway, moving on. I am here with my good friend and fellow Top Gun Fantasy Football Scout Luke, a.k.a. D1sable. He wasn't going to play Euro 2020, but here he is. He couldn't resist. How are you, Luke?
I need help, Az. I need help. It's happened again. Fantasy's taken over. What can we say? What can I say?
It always does. It always gets you in the end. Just when you think you're out.
Exactly.
Back in.
Indeed. Yeah, but I'm happy it's happened because what else am I going to focus on? And all these friendlies and stuff, they're so fun to watch, right? So I'm fully invested now.
So what made you what pulled you in the end? Was it just watching football and thinking you wanted to do a fantasy game, or?
Yeah, talking to the family, carrying on, just watching YouTube videos, bored. Have to focus on the priorities in life, right?
Yep.
It's the excitement building, of course. Great teams playing, great players. How often do you get the chance to pick, Lewandowski? Not that I have and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's excitement. It's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was kind of like not too sure about it all, and then I made the decision to go hard on it because I thought I either won't bother playing it or I will go really hard. I'll do loads of research, read every article I can find, do video series, like really kind of go at it. So I kind of came in from that. But previous tournaments, I haven't really had that much interest in. And I think because especially with like this UEFA game where you've got to be you've got to manage your team every day, change your captain every day, get all your subs right, all that kind of stuff. You've really got to kind of know the rules and know how to play. It's a lot more full on than kind of regular FPL. So.
And these are the kind of games that actually do benefit the people who do that, right? And I think that's just generally a good thing to have in life, to not bother or go hard and nothing in between. But when a game needs a lot of management inside it, so similar to Sky, obviously, which they play in other games, it generally benefits the guys who put the time in. So it's nice to see that because although FPL it is similar, obviously we're all aware with 8 million people and a lot of variance and there's not too much in-game management, you are at the hands of the gods sometimes, and you can get lucky occasionally, which of course you can in this, but I feel like, time put in often results in something in these kind of games.
I really like, already you're getting some comments in the chat, some people mentioning Warzone, saying that they want to see you snipe some people on stream. I don't think we'll get that. Kakashi says you're a man of vibes.
Vibes.
That's what you're all about. I mean, one of the things I'm really interested in is, you mentioned that this game kind of suits the people who put the effort in. Do you think it suits risk takers like you, or do you think that it actually works against you? Because, for example, say you got Berardi captain. We'll talk about your team in a second. You got Berardi captain. Say you get 6 points in the first game, 6-7 points. I'm guessing you're not going to be someone who's happy with that.
Probably not.
But in FPL, I would say if you could consistently hit a captain, which was 7 or 8 points, you'd probably take that over the season. Do you think it's different because it's a different format? And how are you looking to change it up with your captains?
Yeah, I think it mirrors FPL quite well. I think that if we spread our risk and we look for value essentially everywhere on our team, then you can do pretty damn well. You can probably win mini leagues, definitely office leagues and stuff like that. But I feel like if you want to get to the top, then yeah, you will have to take a little bit of a risk and obviously be eggs in basket. And just by the very nature of the competition, the fact that we lose teams as we go along, obviously heavily backing one team over another, is going to reap rewards. I mean, previously, I think it's World Cup 2014, whichever one Louis van Gaal was in charge of Netherlands. I played the Sun game and I came 17th. And basically all I did was pretty much, apart from have James Rodriguez, who was excellent, I had the Dutch back line, so I think I started with 2 or 3. I think you're limited to how many players you can have from a team. And then progressively every round, I just added to it. And in the end, I had like 6 or 7 Dutch defenders or defensive midfielders or whatever. And I think they kept like 6 out of 7 clean sheets. So that was a large part of why I did well. It's obviously just heavily backing something. Now, obviously, if you do that, you've also got a very good chance of doing terribly as well if it doesn't go well. So there's always that risk. But yeah, I do think someone right near the top at the end will have put eggs in basket in some shape.
So it was a shame because I didn't get to do one of the group preview streams with you because you weren't playing the game at one point. I asked you and you said, I'm not playing it. I don't want to do it. And I was like, okay. And now here you are. So before we move on to your team, let's just get a couple of your thoughts about the tournament. Who do you think is going to win, first of all?
Oh, God.
I'm putting you on the spot. We've done this is like Top Gun, so we've done no prep for this.
no, yeah. I think there's a whole host of teams that can obviously win it. I mean, Greece won one recently, so literally anyone could win it. I mean, it's only 7 games. It is 7, isn't it?
Yep.
I'm not being stupid. Total.
7 weeks. Yep.
So, I mean, it's just 7 games, and that's part of the nature of the fact that, I mean, think about the Premier League, for example. You look at the first 7 games, some of the top teams weren't even up to scratch. They're not the same teams that are at the very top. At the end of it, we've got Man United, we've got Chelsea. We've got 38 weeks to make it work. And, by the end of 38
Southampton
weeks,
were 4th, weren't they, for a while?
Oh, exactly. Chelsea had a tragic start. I think Man United were pretty awful, etc., etc. So, yeah, it's a tough one. And I feel like because the international teams don't get a lot of time together for their team cohesion, for who they're going to play. I mean, we're England. We don't even know who we're starting most of the time. It's just the teams that start and gel well are going to do really well initially, and they don't really have that time to build often. So it could be anything. I really like Spain because I just feel like I always like the teams that in international tournaments that keep the ball really well. They're pretty solid defensively. They might struggle to score some goals, but I just feel like in most games they're going to have 78% possession, and that counts for a lot. So I feel like they could do well. The Group F's probably going to have the winner, but it's hard to pick who's going to come from it, right? So therefore, their chances of winning are lessened. But yeah, ultimately, it'll probably come from Group F, I imagine.
Yeah, I'm thinking I can't see past France. I know you mentioned about slow starts and stuff and potential not being able to gel, but they just seem like quite a happy team as well, to the point where they've even let players who annoyed them before come back into the squad, at the risk of kind of unsettling everyone. But the images I've seen, the videos I've seen and stuff, they look happy that Benzema's back and he looks ready to go and he's had a good season again. So I think they're stronger than they were when they won the World Cup, if anything.
Yeah, probably. I think Germany's probably Germany and Spain are mine. I like them both.
Okay, Germany, that's interesting because a lot of people are going against Germany and Spain, saying Spain haven't got the squad they had. Germany obviously in the tough group. I think people are writing Germany off too quickly. Personally, last night was a obviously against quite poor opposition, but a reminder of what they can do.
Yeah, I just think German football's in a really good place at the moment. They've got lots of young, energetic forwards. They try to attack. It's all high pressing. I feel like that could do really well. And obviously, I know, it was only Latvia, but some of their players are just really class. And it's basically the group is the only thing that could. I think if they get out of that group, then I think they've got a really good chance. I just really like them. I think though the teams that have looked good as a team, essentially, which is really hard to do. Italy have looked good as a team, haven't they? So I suppose there are, some people like them at the moment. And ultimately, it's going to be very hard to know. But that's the thing I think with this game. Reacting to form is probably more important because you've only got 7 games to get it right. And even the managers. So I don't know, there's plenty of scenarios in your heads, I think, where we can say, let's say England, for example, they play against Croatia and they don't do particularly well. Let's say Grealish plays terrible. I don't think it's going to happen. I think he's great. But let's say he plays terrible and he comes off in the 70th minute. Does the manager then give him the second game? Has he got time to allow that to happen? Or he's got so many other class players on the bench? Is he going to be forced to try something different straight away? And I feel like the managers themselves will have to react to the form. Yeah. Same way, if someone comes off the bench and bags a brace, is he going to start the next week? Probably.
Well, we saw it a few years ago with England, didn't we? When we just about got through that game against Wales, and then the next game there was a lot of changes. Players who performed in that side. I think Rashford came in. Did Vardy keep his place in the team? And we made a load of changes, didn't we, against Iceland. And then it ended up costing us in that match as well because the squad was all over the place. But players can come in off the bench and do well, and then they'd expect to start the next game. Especially a lot of the top squads. You're not like subbing out a really good player for an average player. You're subbing out a quality player for another quality player. So
Exactly.
you've got limited
probably
time.
would be starting in any other team. That's the
absolutely.
thing. And that's the thing with Germany as well. I wanted to add, I just remembered they went out in 2018 in the group stage, didn't they? I'm pretty sure they did terribly in 2018. I think they lost to Korea, unless I've made that up. And I think, we know what Germany are like. That doesn't happen very often. I think they come back with a vengeance.
Yep. Right, let's talk about your team. That's why people are here. So when I first looked at your team, I thought you'd copied Karam and gone for triple Danish defenders. No, one of them's Austrian, in case anyone else made the same mistake as me. So you've got still got the double Danish defence. So we won't spend too much time in goal because I covered goalkeepers with Karam. He went for Krul, I think. You've got Bachmann there, the Austrian goalkeeper, and Herediki, I think pretty much everyone's going to have because he's a cheap 4 million goalkeeper. But let's talk about your defence. So you've gone double Dane, and you've got an Austrian defender in there as well, and then you've got Danea, who I think I think he's going to feature in pretty much every team that's kind of taking it seriously, along with Pau Torres. So talk to me about your other three. Talk to me about the Austrian defender and the two Danish guys.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just want to say that I'm playing the strategy at the moment anyway of just targeting match day 1 because I plan to use Limitless and Wildcard in 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yep.
Yeah, so as a result, I've just looked at who I think, in my mind anyway, some of the better fixtures. And I know that North Macedonia, I mean, Austria aren't necessarily the best team, but North Macedonia, they've done okay, they've done all right. But when you look at the group and how they got there in qualifying, I mean, some of the teams they've played, they're just dreadful, like some of the teams they've played. And yes, they've qualified, but the two decent teams they played were Poland, which I think they lost 2-0 to, and I think it was Slovenia who they did beat 2-1. But Slovenia are arguably in the bottom 3 teams as well in the competition. So I think stat padding and who you play has a lot to say for the teams in international football. And
Slovenia didn't make it. It's Slovakia, isn't it? Who are in the
Slovakia? Sorry, is it Slovakia? I can't remember if it's Slovakia or Slovenia they played now, but essentially they've not played some very good teams to get here. And as a result, I feel like Austria. In fact, I actually looked at the Austrian match versus Macedonia. I'm just going to bring it up on my screen here. And again, I know you can't say too much in an international tournament, but Austria won 2-1. Macedonia scored in the 94th minute. And when I looked at the stats, Austria had 17 shots. They had 9 on target, 58% possession. They basically dominated the game. And Macedonia scored a last-minute goal when they were obviously 2-0 up. So I think, that game should be good. I would hope that Austria might be able to get a clean sheet. And therefore, as I said, eggs in basket, if I think they're going to get a clean sheet, I may as well double down on it. I think the 4.5 million defenders in this game, it's kind of quirky because quite a lot of them have the best match day fixture. There's almost no reason to spend a lot more money on defenders, certainly not for match day 1. So we're kind of all fallen into this, I don't want to say trap, but thing of picking a load of 4.5 million defenders who actually might be the best picks as well.
Well, you look at some of the top defences. So you look at Spain, you look at Belgium. Look at Turkey in qualifiers. I mean, you've got 4.5 options across all three of those squads. So if you're paying 5.56, you have to be paying for a player who's got a real attacking threat. So Windau, for example, for Holland, or you're paying for the likes of like Stones or someone at England, but I'd much rather have one of the 4.5 guys than back England, I think, to keep clean sheets with the centre-backs options that we've got. I think we should win the group comfortably, but I think teams can probably still get at us and score some goals if they wanted to. I think there's too many good, cheap options. And when you look at your front line, which we'll talk about in a bit more detail, when you're looking at 3 premium picks like that, you need to save elsewhere in your squad. And when you've got an ability to get good players playing for top sides at 4.5, why wouldn't you do that? It just makes complete sense to me.
Yeah, and I'll add that generally those defenders seem a little bit more nailed. I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't fully know what I'm talking about. I'm going but based on what other people are saying. But you can be fairly sure that those Danish guys there are probably going to start, the Austrian ones as well. Whereas you start looking at the 5.5 and the 6 million, fullbacks, for example.
Window's 4.5, so I've just been corrected. Window's 4.5. So another option of 4.5.
Yeah, I've looked at him as well. He's been in and out of my drafts. But some of the top end ones, like the Italy ones and stuff, we start to get to the point where we're not 100% they're nailed. I mean, we don't even know for sure who England's fullbacks are going to be, do we? And that's from our own team. So then when I start trying to trust other people on their other teams, it's hard for me to go down that route. I mean, even Alaba for Spain, I love him. I think he's probably nailed, but then Guy is a decent player and he played all right in the last game and he started the last friendly. Will he maybe miss one game? Possibly. I don't know. So suddenly I'm now paying a lot of money, for a chance that, and let's be fair, most of the time when you get like the assist record at the end of the competition, it's usually like 4 or 5 assists max for the player. So the chances of Alaba picking up, even 1 assist or 2 is reasonably slim. And then suddenly I don't 100% know he's nailed. So why am I paying like 2 million extra?
Yeah.
Probably not worth it.
Yeah. I think like you say, I think it'd be interesting to talk about your strategy about the limitless in 2 and then the wild card in 3. Because if you are doing limitless in 3 and wild card in 2.
Well, no, actually, sorry. It probably will be the way you said, but I do want to talk about if you're only using a limitless chip, I do think it should be 3 rather than 2 if you're only using 1 chip.
Yeah, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, we can talk about that now if you want.
Yeah, we will. Well, just quickly, I mean, I think if you are doing that, so if you've got plans to use 2 chips in the last 2 games of the group stages, then Austria in game week 1 have to be a team that you target. Because from speaking to quite a few Austrian fans over on Twitter and on Scout, they're not too convinced by Austria in terms of they've got good players, but they aren't sure about the system that they implement and whether they can get the best out of them. Alabas, like over on the left wing, doesn't work because he's not a left winger. They're just trying to get the most out of kind of their best player. But North Macedonia, you have to play this game, like you said, to target weak opposition. You just have to, especially in a game where there's only 7 weeks. North Macedonia are the worst team in the tournament. Like they should be. I'm not saying they will be, but they should be the whipping boys. So you have to target teams playing against them. It doesn't mean they will be. It'd be amazing if they can swing some surprises. They beat Germany in the World Cup qualifiers, for example. They're capable of it, but they're also, I think, likely to suffer some fairly heavy defeats. So
yeah. And Austria, they serve that purpose of just having some cheap players that are, potentially out of position, decent value.
Absolutely.
I mean, the thing is as well, on Arnautovic, like if you could tell me 100% he's starting and he's fit, then I'd probably have him in because I feel like he could be a really good differential. Certainly in fan team, he's an option as well, I think. So, yeah, I think you've got to target those games, at least initially. Then quickly, we can move to form, who looks good, who's been doing what else. But what else have we got to go on apart from the fixtures particularly? Because I don't know how much you can even take from friendly results. Like I said, a lot of it is stat padded by who you're playing.
Absolutely. Right, so let's talk about your strategy then. So limitless in 2, wildcard in 3, or just limitless in 3. Yeah. So my worry about match week 3 or match day 3 or whatever the hell it's called, I can never remember. It's so confusing. Just call them game weeks. Is firstly you're going to have teams who are out, and top teams playing them who are through. So they might not play their best players. You might see more rotation in game week 3. Teams might not be going for it as much. Teams might even be trying to throw games like England might if we don't want to qualify first in our group. Yeah. Because we'll be playing the runner-up in Group F. So there's a bit more risk around things like that. Also, games could be tighter if there are teams who need a point, or need 3 points, or need, more nerves, everything like that. To me, the biggest potential for points are in the first 2 weeks. So I've essentially got a wild card in game week 1. So why not use the limitless in 2 to really go for what I think could be the biggest scoring match week of the whole tournament? That's my thoughts.
I agree with that. If you're then going to use the wild card in 3, I think that's probably the better way to do it, because you've got France versus Hungary and stuff, some expensive players that you might want to load up on. So therefore, the limitless is not just the free hit, is it? Obviously, you get the extra money as well. But I think, and I'd also agree that it is easier to plan, as in picking your team for 1 and 3, because a lot of the teams have got a good fixture in 1 and 3, but not necessarily in 2. So it all suits itself to that. I completely get that. But if you're only going to use limitless, I do feel like 3 is the better one, because exactly that, you have more information. You're going to have the information from 1 and 2. You're going to know who needs to go for it, who isn't going to go for it. You can have more information on who's starting and who's playing. You're going to be able to take a few more punts, because you'll be playing people who aren't using a chip, and therefore you can plan as much as you want, right? Let's say I'm planning now before a ball's been kicked in this tournament, and I'm picking my team for 1 and 3. Now think about that. You're already picking your team for the 3rd match day already, because you're using your limitless in 2. you could quite easily walk into a team there that you've even planned particularly well, and half of them aren't starting.
True.
So limitless, I think, is better in free because you'll have, and we already mentioned this, there are other players on the bench that are equally good as the ones starting. I mean, you look at England, we got 6 wide players who you could make a case for any of them. If England are comfortably 6 points ahead and qualified, I don't think that's going to happen, but they're going to use the squad, aren't they? The rotation, I think everyone agrees that most rotation is going to happen in match day 3. So therefore, when you've got limitless, you can also, put your bench and put 12 million players on your bench and stuff, really expensive players that you think are going to do that no one else has got. You've got loads of differentials. Even there's so many scenarios you can imagine in your head. Let's say England need to win that third game, really need to win it because we've lost or drawn the first 2. Obviously, then you could look at it and think, well, the media is going to be having to go at Southgate. The team he's picked's not right. He hasn't started Foden in his 2 games. Well, Foden's going to play game week 3 then. You can be fairly sure because he's going to need to do something different.
That's interesting because you're looking at kind of the opposite to me. Then I'm thinking that match week 3 probably isn't the one to use it because I think there's going to be more rotation and it's hard. But you're actually saying the opposite.
Yeah, that's to your advantage because right now, if you're going to plan, like I say, and only use the 2 chips, then we can be fairly sure that the lineups in game week 1 and in game week 2 are going to be very similar. Can we not? Might be 1 or 2 changes, but generally they're going to be their strongest team. So therefore, does it not make sense to plan your team with 1 and 2 in mind and then use your limitless for a gung-ho on all these randoms?
It does, but I think this game as well lends itself to you not having to worry too much about your squad because we've got all these subs and because we're going to have, it's not like we've got 4 million.
You've got multiple tickets.
Yeah, you've got multiple tickets, exactly. So you need, if a couple of players don't play, you've still got other players that can come on. We've got squads. Sometimes in FPL, we haven't got a squad. We've got a first 11 and then some kind of crappy players that let us enable, the premium picks. In this, I think every team that I'm seeing has, a full size squad. And it's why seeing someone like Kante as like one of the highest owned players in the game is such a joke because he's nothing. Like he's not going to do anything for you at any point, and he's not that cheap. And he's
golden boot confirmed.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, but he's just not serving any purpose. Whereas I'm happy to build it for the other thing about that, and okay, the limitless thing is interesting. I think you can make a case for both. I hadn't really thought about it like that, so that's a good point. But the wild card for me has to be used after the last 16. I do not want to be building a team and then have half of my team out. Going into. I
think that's what I'm saying. The most sensible strategy is probably to use limitless in the group stage and use the wild card where you've just said. That's probably the most sensible strategy overall.
But you're not a sensible man, Luke.
No, but like I said, will the most sensible person end up winning it? I think they're probably likely to be the one who's used most of their chips and gone for it in the group stages where there's lots of imbalances in the team. I mean, Germany versus Hungary's game week 3, right? Right now, you can't possibly plan for that match because you don't really know what the situation will be. Will Hungary be bottom and Germany have 6 points? Can you therefore pick all Germany's reserve wingers, which are just as good as their other ones, and they're going to want to make an impact and score 4 or 5 goals? Maybe. Will they need points in that game and have to play their first team? Maybe, but you don't know that now. Whereas using a chip in game week 3, I feel like that is a very good game where it could easily be. I mean, they just beat Latvia. What was it, 7-0 or whatever it was? I mean, could that game be that? Conceivably.
Are you saying that it might be best to go against optimal strategy to try and win the game?
Again, if you want to do well in your mini leagues, do well. You just play it cool. But I feel like to go for broke, you probably want to do something a little bit different. And match day 3 has the potential for all sorts of crazy stuff to happen as a result. Incentives, team rotation, squads. So if you've got a limitless chip in there and can literally pad your entire team out with really expensive options that you have some safe picks. I mean, you're going to know, will Kane play in that game, for example, versus Czech Republic? We've got 6 points. Is there any need to risk him? Maybe not. But if we need to get points, will he? Yeah. So you could put a safe Kane in there. That's fine. But there will be some other options you can look at. Spain are playing Slovakia. They've got loads of wingers that might not have played a game to that point.
Yeah, so you're massively rolling the dice though if you're trying to predict that kind of thing. I mean,
it's the roll of the dice.
Who's going to know if Kane's going to play really? He could be because they want to keep him going form. He wants the golden boot, or he could miss out because Southgate wants to rest him because we got Germany in the next game. I don't know. I'm still pretty set on limitless too. I think you make a good case, but for me, I'm still gonna stick with my strategy. So let's talk about your midfield. So coming back to your team, so you've got what looks to be a pretty good midfield to me. You've got Jota there, you've got Ferran Torres, so you've got kind of 2 more expensive midfielders there. You've got Wijnaldum, you've got Alaba, and you've got Berardi. So I think Wijnaldum and Alaba to me are weak links. Wijnaldum's been playing a bit deeper for Netherlands if they adopt this 5-3-2 formation that they've been using. Alaba, Alaba's a strange one. I mean, he is a midfield. They've got it right. Like, they've got his classification right in this game. On fan team, he's a defender. He looks a lot more attractive. I worry about Alaba's real potential to actually do something, but like you say, he's got the fixture to go for it. So, and I guess you haven't got to worry long term if you're doing the limitless and the wild card. You can literally purely build your team for game week 1, and I guess that's what you've done, right?
Yeah, and you've picked out. I mean, the two ones I'm definitely not sure about are Wijnaldum and Alaba.
Yep.
Like 100%. I feel like Torres is probably a little bit too cheap if he does what everyone expects him to be. Basically, I mean, in my mind, he's essentially the David Villa of Spain now. He's the wide one who's going to be entrusted to try and get the goals, which I like. So he's in midfield, so he's obviously going to be in there. They've obviously got a decent game. But generally, the midfielders, I don't particularly like any of the cheap ones. And then when you start to look at the really expensive ones, a lot of them aren't even nailed. Like we can't, some of the German ones, the England ones, we don't know who's even going to play. So suddenly you're kind of forced into this niche bracket, really, of around the Torres mark.
I think around 7 is quite a good price. There seems to be quite a good selection of players for around 7. So like I've got Malinovsky, for example. There's Forsberg, the Swedish striker. I think Swedish midfielder. He's 7.5. Then you've got like the Italians, Chiesa, Berardi. We'll know who's going to start out of those before the deadline hits. Then you've got players like Mount. You've got Souček at 6.5. Like there's enough, isn't there? I think to not go too
exactly. And the Wijnaldum and Alaba may change for me, but I mean I've had Zielinski in there at times. I've had Mount in there. I mean there's lots you can do with that if you want to, like you say, bring Wijnaldum down because he's 8 million to like the 6.5 mark, and then obviously I can push Alaba up, but. At the moment, I just feel like Wijnaldum's record for Holland's really, really good. And I know that Holland's, the camp's not right, it seems, at the moment, et cetera, et cetera. But I still feel like they're probably favourites for that game. Ukraine aren't particularly good in defence. And if he's an advanced midfielder who can score goals, then, I might take the punt. He's not nailed by any means. Alaba might be on pens, he'll be set pieces. Again, when you come to these tournaments, a lot of these teams, like how are Austria really going to score their goals? If Arnautovic isn't fit and he isn't playing, it's going to come from a set piece, probably, isn't it? For like many of these teams. So I feel like just going with that is a reasonable option. And really, it's the strikers that are important in this game at the moment, at least. So that's what I've.
So you've gone very, very heavy up top, which is exactly the same as what I'm doing. Ronaldo, Depay, and Lukaku. Yeah, I mean, to me, that's where the sensible thing is. Group stages means goals. You've got to back teams to get goals to get your points. Lukaku, I think, if you haven't got Lukaku in your team, I kind of worry for you. I think Ronaldo and Depay, with Lewandowski there, with Kane there, I can see why people might, be looking at. There isn't really a clear template. I think Lukaku's definitely there, and then there's a few different options that I can see. With your strategy, though, Ronaldo has to be there, right? Hungary first game.
Yeah, the Ronaldo thing for me, I completely understand what people are saying, that you may have hit a captain beforehand, and therefore how much is his value if you're already willing to stick on what you've got, because obviously then you're paying 12 million for essentially 50% of what he gets. But he's surely like just the best insurance player in the game because they play last, they play in one of the best fixtures. I mean, it's Ronaldo. I mean, he's gonna. What an insurance guy to have. I know he's aging, but would it be a surprise if Ronaldo scores a brace versus Hungary, a penalty and a goal? I don't think anyone would be shocked, right? And yeah, you might be happy with what you've got, but I at least want him in my team, even if I don't captain him, to at least get 50% of his points there. And we also have to remember there is an element of luck in this game. There'll be a lot of casuals. Yeah, we've bought a ticket and we've picked our team and we've got Berardi captain, then we've got Depay, then we've got... These guys could all fail. And the guys who have just literally set their team and gone straight to Ronaldo captain, because he's the most popular player, in the world, probably, and not even set them, suddenly win the lottery with their one ticket they've had because Ronaldo scores a brace on the final day. Now, I kind of want that in my team.
But what I really want to know, and I want an answer from you, is if you've gone through all your captains and you've got Lukaku and he's got a goal. Let's start off quite small. Let's say he's got a goal. All right, so he's got 7 points.
I want at least a brace. I'm going to tell you now. It's going to be at least a brace. I'm going to keep rolling it for a brace probably because I've got Ronaldo on the final day. Okay. If I didn't have that, then fair enough. But I feel like if I've just got a goal and maybe a goal and assist, I'd have to think about it. But I feel like if you get a goal and assist for Lukaku and then you've got Ronaldo sat on the bench, I guess then again, it's going to come how well are you doing comparatively in the league. Like if you're right up there, then maybe you just settle. But if you're really, really far down, then there's no reason not to roll the dice. A little bit of fun.
So if Lukaku's got a goal and assist, you would still consider a switch to Ronaldo on the final day?
Consider it, because I feel like most of the, especially in the group stages, this is where there's differentiation between the who's going to have as captains. You've got multiple days. As we move forward, it's going to become more set. You're going to have days where there's a semi-final and there's essentially probably two big captains that you could picking on either team. You're either going to have Lukaku or you're going to have Ronaldo. Let's say they're in the semi-finals. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And that's going to be hard to make up ground at that stage, because everyone's going to be probably on the bookies' favourites at that point. Especially us as fantasy, like hardcore fantasy managers, you generally follow the odds and the way the stats and who should win, don't you, rather than anything else. So yeah, I feel like now's the time to risk the captain, certainly.
It's interesting. I wonder what the more kind of casual players are going to do, whether they are going to just forget and just put it on Ronaldo and just leave all week. Or do you think also that there might be more merit in just banking on a player? So say Lukaku does get a goal, not having the kind of itchy trigger finger and changing it over might be a better strategy, because I think a lot of people might think, oh, he's only got a goal, maybe I'll go for 2 goals. But we know that goals can be quite hard to get for players and quite hard to predict.
And I think if that was over a 38-week season, you'd settle most of the time. But again, if we're going for the win against a small set of people, you probably want to roll the dice.
That's what I wanted to hear.
The bottom line is, if you don't, someone will, and someone will hit it. Most of them will fail, but there will be one that hits it. There's no way that there won't be. You're telling me there's people out there that have got 4 captains in a week and they don't hit a single one. There'll be someone who'll hit a captain every single week out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then you just have to try and chase the big haul, I think. It's just that, that's my feeling anyway.
Well, that's what I wanted to hear from you, to be honest. It's refreshing to know that you're adopting a similar strategy in this. I mean, I wouldn't have thought any different, to be honest. So 2 more questions for you. Firstly, who do you think will be the top scorer in the game?
Oh, God.
And secondly, who is your sort of dark horse for the tournament in terms of team?
You haven't prepared me for these at all, have you? Top. Talk to me.
No, you wouldn't have heard that. They wouldn't have heard that on the stream. I was telling Alexa to stop because the alarm's going off.
Okay.
You would have heard it on Zoom.
Right, I was confused for a second. Top goal scorer. Top goal scorer. That is tricky. Maybe Benzema. I think he's got a decent chance. I mean, central striker for France.
Yeah,
France
nice.
are the favourites.
Over the likes of Mbappe, Griezmann.
Yeah, I think possibly. I think because he's just the main guy who generally sits up there. I know he kind of links the play a little bit like Firmino and stuff, but I think he could do well. I think certainly one of the France guys is obviously being the favourites for the tournament. I think Lukaku's a great shout, but I think often in these, the Golden Boot winners, I mean, it's decided in the group stages. So again, I come back to the fact if Germany are playing Hungary and they decide to do a 6-7-0 like against Latvia, it could suddenly be Werner who gets a hat trick because he hasn't played in the first 2 games and he's suddenly up there. So yeah, it's tough to say, but probably someone from France, maybe Benzema. Dark horses. I do actually think Ukraine.
Just really quickly, just touching on what you just said. I think it's one of the reasons why I'm getting so excited about this game and this tournament and all of that, because you forget that these players emerge, right? There's quite a strong template emerging now with players and picks and things. And yet every tournament we see, and in the Premier League as well, especially this year with like John Stones and Jota and all these guys suddenly taking it up to the next level, we're going to see players who we hadn't considered just suddenly 100%. Emerging onto the thing and coming off the bench and scoring, starting the next game doing really well. So having the chips early on is great because it means you can kind of be flexible with moving around. But I think in particular, you've really got to be paying attention to know who's going to go on a run. I love it. I think it's going to be great.
We see it all the time. James Rodriguez was obviously a class player when he was at Colombia, but I don't think anyone expected him to do quite as well as he did at the World Cup. And there's been numerous examples. I mean, the past, Karol Popolski, for example, other people who've done incredibly well. I mean, it's only 7 games, right? If they go all the way, most of the teams will get 3. I mean, look at Jesse Lingard when he signed for West Ham. You'd think he was Messi for 7 games, right? Best player in the world. And that can happen to virtually anyone, I suppose. Yeah. It can happen. So I feel like it's goes back to what I said at the start. I think you have to react to form pretty quickly in this because you don't have the time, the same as the managers, to hope that it's going to work.
Absolutely. And you have to as well, because if you don't, the managers will, like you said. So, if you think, he's come off the bench and looked really well and looked really good. I'm a bit worried about Immobile now. and you're like, oh no, I'll keep him. The manager's like, no, Immobile, you were rubbish in that game. Chiesa, you're straight in. You had a banging performance when you came on.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
There's a number of teams like that. England, Spain in particular stick out. Germany, a lot of these guys that have got just world-class players pretty much sat on the bench. Italy to an extent, Belgium. They come off the bench and they score a brace. They're probably going to play the next game, right? That's why I like when you use your limitless at the end or use a chip, you've got that information to work with. Right now, you can't possibly know these things.
Yep. Sorry, dark horse. Who's your dark horse?
I don't dark horse. I mean, there's the obvious names. I think Ukraine could do pretty well. I like their team in general. They're not particularly good defensively, but they're quite good offensively. And Netherlands are in a bit of a bad way. So game week 1, I'm not sure what can happen, but I really do like their game week 2 and game week 3 fixtures. So I feel like if you're setting up a team in such a way where you don't want to use your chips, then maybe having some Ukraine players on the bench, like that's what I've got in fan team, for example, to use it against North Macedonia in game week 2 and then against Austria in 3 could be quite beneficial.
I keep talking about Malinovsky. I think he looks set to have a really good tournament.
I like Yarmolenko. I think he's done really well for Ukraine. He looks like he might be on pens ahead of him as well. And I know he hasn't done particularly well for West Ham, but he is an extremely direct player. And he has been useful for Ukraine in the past. So I think he's an outside shout.
Yaremchuk's there as well. He could be someone who features on a limitless in match week 2, even though I know obviously the strikers are such premium assets. But when you've got that fixture against North Macedonia, it's always worth considering anyway. I think I'm a bit biased because I wrote 2 articles for Scout, one on Ukraine and one on Sweden. And the more I was researching, the more I was thinking, oh, these 2 teams could actually do really well. And I don't know whether it is purely biased. But Sweden, it's pretty impressive how many options Sweden have in attack, particularly. No one's really too sure about
Isak and Forsberg are both really good players, aren't they? From what I'm reading.
Forsberg looks great. He's in all set pieces, penalties, everything. Isak's got competition. There's Berg there. There's Kulovensky. There's another guy who scored like all their goals in qualifiers. So it's quite hard to know who's going to start for them. But having that many, having that kind of depth is probably something we don't really associate with Sweden that much. But they could do quite well if they can get. They've got a fairly tough group. Spain and Poland are probably the favourites in that. But yeah, they could do quite well. But yeah, I agree. I like the Ukraine. I think they should do quite well.
Yeah, hopefully. They're a fun team generally to watch. They're either dreadful or very good, usually.
Exactly. Yeah, and Zinchenko there, playing out of position. We love an out of position pick. Took a penalty as well, as Karim said in the last video.
I think in game week 2, when especially people who are using chips, I think Zinchenko's going to be in most people's team.
Absolutely lock-in. What we want is for him to have a fairly quiet match week 1, and then bring him in for that second week. That would be ideal. Luke, that is fantastic. There's your team. I look forwards. I will be following your team particularly with interest, as I always do. Can't wait to see some mad players. Can't believe even got Bale. No Gareth Bale.
He's in fan team. He's 6 million in fan team.
I know, he's so cheap, right? Yeah. How much is he in this? Is he more premium?
It's like 9.5, I think.
Yeah, that's way too much.
Which is just, like I said, the expensive midfielders are just, it's tough to know who to go for there.
He is your boy, though.
He is my boy. He served me very well. It's actually said that Just Eat voucher with crazy picks. I might just do that again.
Yeah, just Bale every week. Yeah, done. Nice one. Thanks so much, Luke. I'll speak to you soon.